And a very good morning to everybody. Today is the 19th of July, 2018. I'm Roy Potter. This is the Potter Expositor. Welcome to all of you who are coming in. And it seems like I pretty much do these on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Again, it's primarily to try to stay out of everybody else's way that so many of them do those great live streams. Of course, I'll end up walking on somebody, I'm sure. But at any rate, the chat is on. So you all can start discussing amongst yourselves if you like. And at the end, as usual, I'll try to answer some questions. Wow, things are really heating up. I hope you all are paying attention. The deep state is getting, well, this has actually been a plan of theirs for a long time, that they'd follow this plan of doing certain things, and if they don't work, they'll shift to something else. Well, of course, the final result will be not impeachment, I don't think, but they'll try to assassinate Trump or do something else similar to that. That's how it's looking. The New Yorker, I believe it was yesterday morning, the magazine shows Trump laying at the bottom of an elevator. Now, they could say that means his presidency is falling. But I think when you compare that to everything else that's being said, the play in New York that Laura Loomer went to back about now a year and a half ago or so, where they did that play supposedly about Caesar, but it was obviously Trump that they assassinate. And of course, we've heard Philip Mudd say that this government's going to kill Trump, and then he's calling as well as Brennan for the cabinet to act against Trump and people in the administration, and certainly assassination is on their table, obviously. So they're getting more brazen, and I just, it's interesting that, let me back up here a minute. I still use the left-right symbolism, but I'm very aware that the left-right paradigm is wrong, that both the Democrats and the Republicans are really the same people. They're two sides of the same coin. And I really don't like to talk about the left unless I attach Marxism and that type of tyranny to it. So you'll usually hear me say leftist Marxists. Now, that's not to say that there aren't some in the Republican Party. What I'm saying is whether they are either Republicans or Democrats, they are exhibiting leftist Marxist behavior, either overtly or covertly. Ryan would be a good example of that. John McCain, okay, even though they're Republicans. So I don't want anybody to think that I bought into the left-right paradigm of the Democrats and the Republicans. I've never bought into that, and I know the danger of it. And frankly, President Trump isn't really acting like a Republican. He's acting more like, well, a populist, yes, but I'm going to say more on the side of constitutional issues like a libertarian would. There are some exceptions, I realize, but when I say leftist Marxist, I don't want anybody to think that I'm identifying just the Democrats. It's just the Democratic Party is I guess you would say, the overt face of this attempt to destroy our constitutional republic. But obviously there are people on the Republican side like McCain. I imagine, what's her name, his daughter that keeps defending him. I have to give her credit for defending her father. I mean, I wouldn't expect anything less. But boy, sometimes you just have to call it out for what it is, and she's just not able to do that. I can't remember her name right now. But at any rate, so I just wanted to clear that up to make sure everybody knows when I say leftist Marxists, it's by what they do. Remember, I look at principles, not personalities, not titles, those types of things. I look at what they do. It's not what I hide inside, but what I do that defines me. I quoted that particular line from Batman several times. And by your fruits you shall know them. So no matter what they call themselves, it's what they do that defines them, and that's what we need to watch. The leftist Marxists have been invited into our institutions, into our government, into our homes for at least 3 decades and possibly as long as 6. Yes, it may have started with the Soviet, let me rephrase that, the Soviet effort to undermine our country during the Cold War, but we were doing the same to them. And ours wasn't all goody two-shoes stuff, freedom, liberty, and all that. It really wasn't. As you can see, what happened after the wall came down in Berlin, right? When détente finally moved into the next phase where the Soviet Union basically fell apart. There are people like Bill Browder, which we're going to talk about a little bit today, but there are many others that pretended to go into the prior Soviet Union, into Russia, to help them shift to a free market economy and to capitalism. That's how it was touted, and Lee Stranahan talks about this in great depth. What they really did, and I'm not saying all of them, but certainly the likes of Bill Browder, they went in there and they raped the Russian people. They raped them. They took billions of dollars out of that country, away from those people, basically stole it. And then we wonder why the Russians don't like Bill Browder or his type, or Soros, or those types of people. So when you look at this entire situation that's happening right now with President Trump, you have to look at the actions of the people, not just what they're saying, because they're now accusing President Trump of the very things that actually Obama did, but they never called, or Bush or Clinton. We could include all of those. Even Carter. Further back than that. All the things that they're accusing Trump of doing as if he's being a traitor. And we already know this. It's a Luciferian, Saul Alinsky tactic to accuse others of what you're doing. And that's exactly what they're doing. They never called Obama on the carpet for it. But they're using it because they know it's wrong. They know what Obama did was wrong. They know it was contrary to the constitutional republic, to the perfect law of liberty, to what we're supposed to stand for, and certainly Obama's oath of office, etc. They know it's wrong. What happened? That's why now they're saying, yeah, we know it's wrong, but we're going to accuse Trump of it because now politically it helps us out, because we really do want to destroy the constitutional republic and take out Trump. I hear a lot of commentators say, oh, they hate Trump so much, they hate Trump. Remember, Trump is the centerpiece, is the symbol of the awakening of the people to the perfect law of liberty, to the idea of freedom and the constitutional republic. And so that's what they really hate, and I hope everybody understands that. So when the New Yorker shows Trump laying down at the bottom of an elevator, that's really what they want. But that's all of us. I hope you understand that. So, I don't want to divide us. I don't want to. But the fact of the matter is that it's evident. It's evident everywhere. And of course, we all know that this division is taking place on purpose. The evil side is doing it to try to obtain power. God's doing it to try to prove to the people that are doing this, the good side, to prove that they are his gold, that he is refining them for his purposes in the future. So it's the same thing happening with different results for those who choose, depending upon their objectives, their motives, okay? So I just wanted to clear all that up about the left-right paradigm. Leftist, Marxist, when I say that, I don't necessarily mean just Democrats, although by and large, the Democrats are obviously showing that overtly more than the others. The others are more covert. You got to kind of see what's happening under the surface, like Ryan again and McCain, okay, just as an example. Okay, I wanted to talk about that. You can see that I'm calling this the Deception of Substitution, and that's kind of an introduction as to what's going on here. This is a common thing when you, even salespeople, when they show you a bottle, let's say you may have had some of these door-to-door people come to your home, and they have a cleaner, for instance, and it's in a bottle and it's labeled something, let's say super cleaner or whatever, And the stuff they have in the bottle, they're using it and they're showing it's really incredible stuff. It's actually just super concentrated at that point. But the stuff they actually sell you is a watered down version. In other words, the contents of the container aren't the same as what the label shows. And that is a progression of things that happen over a period of time. I hope I'm not getting too deep into this. It's called the law of entropy. Second law of thermodynamics. And what it is that without a conscious effort to keep things developing to be more complex, or to remain the same even, if you don't apply the principles to keep those things going in the right direction, they have a tendency to decay, to fall apart, to go from complex to less complex, not the other way around. That's why there's a problem with the theory of evolution, and I've discussed that before. It doesn't fit. It's just not true. So you have to recognize that there's an outside intelligence of some sort that's keeping this thing going from building from simple to complex. At any rate, so it's a natural thing for the further away you get from a source of something, from its origin or whatever, that it becomes corrupted. It's just the way it is, unless there are principles in place that are honestly and tediously adhered to make sure that it doesn't degenerate. Unfortunately, there are people like leftist Marxists that saw the United States, saw where this could go for the perfect law of liberty, and didn't want that. I mean, it's really in their genes. It's really in their mindset. And unfortunately, they package it so that it becomes very popular, very enticing to a lot of people, especially those who don't have experience in the world. In other words, the young, the people in universities. What's really sad is my Republican friend talks about this a lot. He says, look at the 60s, flower kids that were talking about peace and love and all that. They're the people that are doing this to the world right now. Them and their generation right after, the generation that they fostered, themselves. They're the people that are doing these crazy things. It almost defies explanation, but it's because they lose sight of the principles that they thought they were holding on to begin with. In other words, those principles weren't impregnated in their hearts and minds. They were a tool to an end. And they're willing to change those to obtain the end. It's Machiavellian, there's no doubt about it. Well, on that note, I wanted to bring up a few things to show where this is. Our government is an example. Never perfect, never said it was, but the original founders, I don't hold them in some worship category. A lot of people might consider that. It's not that. It's what they said and what they did, what they tried to provide to their posterity. It's like Jesus said, you'll have the poor with you always. You only have me with you for a short time. Well, it was the same with the founders. So they did have to make sure that their posterity, the people that their families and things were taken care of, they were taking a big risk. The amazing thing about what they did was that they offered that same plan to the rest of us. They couldn't give us wealth. They couldn't give us liberty. We have to do that for ourselves. They packaged it so that if we understood the principles, we could carry it on. And then we could ensure it for our posterity, ourselves and our posterity. Well, that's been lost now. By and large, it's been lost, especially amongst the leftist Marxists who are trying to destroy the concept of working together, which is fine. It's necessary. No single person ever really did anything on their own. That is a true statement. But the point is you don't usurp individuality in the process. Not completely. And it needs to be a voluntary thing. If you see an organization that is going in the direction you want, then you should have the right to either freely join it or not, depending upon your conscience. And when you go there, then you understand that you have to mold yourself and maybe give up a few things that you wanted. For instance, you can't stay at home all day now. You might have to go to the organization and work or take part in it or whatever. You see what I'm saying? But the individual liberty itself has to remain intact. Well, that's not what these people want. They want to get inside your head. They want to control you. They want to actually destroy and change your DNA. That's how bad these people are. And there's some folks out there who are talking about that pretty well right now. But I wanted to talk about the government as the first example. So they say they're one thing, and then they substitute this other. And then if you call it into question, you're the one that's in trouble, right? Not them. They changed, basically, let's say it's the principle or the God of perfect law of liberty, of the constitutional republic. Okay? They change it, and you say, hey, wait a minute, that's not the same thing. And they say, we're the ones that are in charge. We're the guys. You have to do it the way we tell you, even though we're not abiding by the original principles. Okay? We've seen that happen with government. It happens with institutions, organizations, all the time. Anybody who's worked in the corporate world, they change over time. Sometimes, if it's a good organization, it gets better. Oftentimes, it doesn't. I've worked for organizations, both government and private, that they got somebody in there who didn't abide by the original principles, and the thing just got nasty. And I've talked about that a couple of times. So the point is, it can happen in government, and we're seeing that right now with our intelligence communities. What's my slogan on my channel? The intelligence community is our most dangerous domestic enemy. Is it not proving out to be the case, as I said? Yes. And we're going to talk about some people today. I might as well do that right now while we talk about this. I did a short live stream last night where I showed the situation with Lieutenant Colonel Schaefer and Ann Coulter saying, the FBI needs to be disbanded and we need to turn that over to the U.S. Marshal Service. Who else has said that? Well, Chris Farrell of Judicial Watch and myself. Basically, the same concept was said by Craig Sawyer. And I think Matt Bracken, as I said, has probably said something similar. I can't say it was exactly like that. But there are a lot of people that realize that this institution of the FBI, really the whole IC, but the FBI has become so corrupt, not just the top level, because they've ensured that people have come into their organization, even at the lower levels, that will continue their particular thought processes and programs. As a matter of fact, you can't become a special agent in charge until you go back to the Washington, D.C. office and submit yourself to the upper echelon, to the upper command structure. And they check you out to make sure that not that you're going to do the good job in supporting the Constitution and protecting the American people. Oh, no. That's not what it's about. It's about if you're going to be a company man or a company woman. That's what it's about. And anybody who thinks otherwise is lying to you. Who thinks that, they're being fooled. And if they're telling you that's the way it is, they're lying to you, or they just don't know. So I brought that up last night. I definitely believe that's the case. Can it be done? Yes, but it's not going to be easy because, as you can see, just trying to make peace with Russia, even though if you go back and you look at this, how many presidents have tried to make peace with Russia? It's happened before, and they've gotten in trouble by whom? The intelligence community. Is the intelligence community all-knowing? No, they're just trying to secure their power. That's all they're doing. They're not trying to help the world situation improve. They want to keep it in the situation of violence and war and poverty and deception so that they can be the ones that are controlling it. For whom? For the Wall Street lawyers and bankers who really the CIA are, and also for the New World Order and that type of thing. So I talked a little bit about Lieutenant Colonel Schaefer and Ann Coulter. And Ann Coulter and I have been on opposite sides of an argument several times, but she's come out with some good stuff lately, and that's one of them. She's absolutely correct. Lieutenant Colonel Schaefer, again, as I said, and also Chris Farrell of Judicial Watch. Now, most of you might know a gentleman by the name of Kevin Shipp. Now, I can't honestly say I know he's CIA. There seems to be enough, or former CIA, there seems to be enough information out there to strongly support that claim that he makes. He may have even shown documentation at some time. I kind of doubt that. But you look at his fruits, you look at what he's doing, and it kind of makes sense. his knowledge base, how he informs people, his warnings, the attacks that have happened against him. By the way, I of course, as you know, I'm traveling again. I don't go very far, but I have things I've got to do. And I'm in a place now. The air conditioning isn't very good, and I ate a little breakfast that they had downstairs, and oh my gosh, I think I'm gonna have to go out somewhere for lunch. But anyway, I go from that really nice restaurant last night. Well, getting back with Kevin Shipp, I respect Kevin Shipp much more so than some of the other CIA claimants that are out there, and I won't mention any particular names. Kevin Shipp seems to be more than legitimate, but at least what he says, you can verify by and large. And this is what he said in a tweet yesterday. And this is what I'm saying about what happened under Obama. As a matter of fact, the very people that are accusing Trump of being a traitor have done traitorous, treasonous things themselves, the very things they accuse Trump of, because they know it's wrong. But anyway, let me read this to you. This is a tweet from Kevin Shipp. Quote, John Brennan lies. Council on Foreign Relations, he's saying he's part of it. Council on Foreign Relations promotes the lie. Evidence, CIA broke into Senate computers to spy on the SSCI report on torture, severe torture farmed out to foreign countries. Shadow government lies to people, volume up. If you're on Twitter, make sure you follow Kevin Shipp, because he understands what's happening. Again, you have to keep your eye on these people, because once a CIA agent, once a spook, they're kind of tilt a little bit. And I've even said that about Dr. Pachinik. Dr. Pachinik's especially dangerous. I'm not saying he's a bad man. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying you've got to watch him, because not only has he been a spook and a big one, but he's also a psychiatrist. So he's got both of those things there. And you really got to watch Pachinik. Now, I'm not saying I dislike him. I like him a lot, although there's some things that I'm cautious with him on. So anyway, I wanted to bring that up. And obviously, if you look at, for instance, a contract that you sign, I'm still on this thing about substitution as deception. You go and you buy a car, and you're told all these things about it, especially used cars, right? And you're told, oh yeah, you get all this, and you get this nice maintenance contract, and they spell it out in such a way that you think it's a good deal. You go drive the car, it seems fine, but what they've done is they put some sawdust in the transmission, whatever. Now, buyer beware. I agree with that. And that's why I say we need to hold the people that do this accountable. But the point is that you don't read the fine print. They give themselves some advantage over you. The lending institution does. And basically what you end up with is not what you thought you were, right? And then you can end up into trouble unless you use due diligence and protect yourself. But, of course, government sets itself up in such a situation, and so do corporations if you work for them, that you can't use due diligence, that's considered what? Betrayal, going against the status quo. In other words, that it's improper for you to question them, that they set themselves up above the principle. Okay, so here we go again. They no longer support the principle, they're supporting themselves. And of course, because of that, change occurs, which is 90% of the time not for the better. Now, a lot of people say, hey, Roy, and I've seen these before. You've been part of these cults before. Well, all of you have, whether you realize it or not. We all have to some extent. And it's very typical in a cult for it to start out pretty benign, because it doesn't really have the attributes of a cult. Church institutions, religious institutions, are probably the best example, but certainly leftist Marxists are. Stalin, for instance, Mao, okay, those types of people. Then change, things to their benefit later, change the contents of the bottle. It's no longer what's on the label. Our government's done the same thing. I'm not saying it hasn't. It has, and that's why we need to use this intelligence, this realization, this awakening, to put energy back into the system to make it go back to its principle and stop relying on these personalities and these fleeting, incorrect concepts that are destroying our constitutional republic, and eventually it will destroy mankind. Well, in religious institutions, they'll start talking about God. God's the centerpiece, right? But then what quickly happens is that it moves to the people that control the organization. Again, I've been there, I've seen this, and if you open your eyes, you'll agree that that's happened to you, or at least you've been aware of it in other situations. So what happens is the people in power, the people in the positions, then what do? They start substituting themselves between you and God, and in fact, dictating to you as if they are God. You've got to admit that this is what happens. It happens almost 100% of the time. You can see where I'm going with this, I hope. Okay? I'm going to try not to get into a long dissertation about the letter that's out there, because it does some good, just like a religious institution does. And I'm going to bring this back to the LDS, the Mormon Church, again, because that's a mainstream. A lot of people disagree with that. It's a large religious organization, okay? And they have missionaries. Think about this, about going out and finding followers and convincing them that what you're doing is right, that you've got the inside track. Missionaries go out and they don't even tell you the history of their church. They now have gone from the original concepts to something somewhat different. Actually, it's significantly different, but they don't tell you that. They're still saying that they have these, or some basics of the original that they know will hook you, but the actual changes that have occurred in the organization are immense. So they come out there, and just like the scripture says, right, I've quoted it several times, Jesus said it, you compass sea and land for one proselyte, and when he is made, he is twice the child of hell than yourselves. You become part of the machine. And now the machine that is supposed to show you the way to find the truth now becomes the substitute for that, and now claims to be the truth itself. Do you see what I'm saying here? Let me give you an example so you'll see it a little more clearly. I have friends and family members, of course, that were in the Mormon Church. Let me preface this by saying most Mormon people are great. Okay? They are. The leadership, that's something else. Most Mormon people are okay. They're just trying to do the best with what they've got with the information that they have. So I'm not trying to bash them. But when they become unaware, like we did with our government changing our constitutional republic into this democracy that's actually the centerpiece for the IC and for the New World Order and for the deep state. You see what's happened there? The LDS Church did much the same thing at the leadership level. And it has permeated down through the church to where the people believe that if you say something against the leadership, because they may consider something that they did to be incorrect, that now they're at odds with the truth, with the God that they put out there to have you follow. But in reality, these are the people, these men and these women, mostly men in the LDS Church, but you can see the example here, that you can't cross them because they now have substituted themselves into that position of God. Example. Many members of my family, many friends that I have who were excommunicated for one reason or another. Not necessarily for doing anything immoral, but for disagreeing with what the leadership was doing. Kind of what we do in our democracy when we see, in our constitutional republic, when we see somebody who steps out of line in office, we're supposed to recall them, get them out. Well, the leaders of the Mormon Church have placed themselves in such a position that anybody who goes against them risks, and when I say against them, I mean you can disagree on a very small item of doctrine, and I'm not going to get into any particulars there, but a very small item of doctrine, and they can say that they excommunicate you. They throw you out of the church, which really causes you problems socioeconomically in Utah and in other, not so much in the missionary field, but certainly in Utah and in Nevada, not so much in Wyoming, Idaho, yeah. Anyway, so I hope you see what's going on here. So one of the questions they'll ask the leaders when they've excommunicated you, and if you want to try to get back in, or during the excommunication process, this is what they'll do. These are nearly the exact words. Okay, brother or sister so-and-so, let's say that the president of the church, the prophet of the church, says something. And then you have God come to you, and God tells you something directly opposed to that. And we're not going to question whether this is really God or not. We're going to say it is in fact God. Okay, they give you that provision. They actually say that. So, again, the question is, brother or sister so-and-so, if the president prophet of the church says one thing, and then you have God come to you, and God tells you direct opposite to that or something else, who do you follow? What do you do? You can see where this is going, right? If you say that you're going to follow God, that's the wrong answer, because they have set up their structure so that the president, what he says, the prophet of the church, takes precedence over what God tells you. Now, there'll be Mormons out there that'll throw eggs, throw tomatoes, and say, that's not true. It's because you haven't been there. You haven't been to that place where you've actually questioned about your history, about the interpretation of your scriptures. D&C 110 is a good one. You go in there and question about D&C 110, they're going to be all over you. Okay? The point is that the original purpose has been usurped by people who want the power, the control, the money. Okay? There's still a lot of good people in the organization that are using it to try to, understand the world, understand their spiritual development, try to get closer to God. But the leadership gets to the point where you either accept them or you get rejected. If you question them, you're the one put on the carpet. You're the one accused. You're the one considered to be an apostate, a betrayer, a traitor. You see? Do you know what I'm talking about here? Do you see what's happening? And that's happening to the conservative movement in increasingly large numbers every day. The division has occurred. I'm not saying it's bad. I think it's bad for the United States. I think it's bad for the conservatives as a whole, certainly for President Trump and those who support him. But I've begun to look at this from a larger perspective. And that is that not everybody makes it to heaven. They just don't. Whatever your concept of heaven is. Jesus said he came to divide things. And that's really what Luciferians do too. But they do it for an evil purpose. They do it to hurt you, to usurp your liberties. The concept of the perfect law of liberty is to see if you will, despite all of the personalities out there and all of the labels on the bottle, if you'll have the courage to check and see what the contents of the bottle are, and if they are not what the label says they are, to reject them. So the dividing is the refiner's fire. We're seeing that, and it's a terrible thing. I don't like what's happening. I don't. I'll be honest with you, because it has the potential for some very dangerous, murderous things, as we're going to see, as we already have. There was I think it was an FBI agent here the other day that was set to testify against the Hillary thing, and he was shot in his car. He may have been an informant, but did you see that in the news? I doubt that John Brennan pulls the trigger on his own, okay? But he has loyalists within the CIA, within the intelligence community, and operatives outside of it that they can use for that. And yes, I do believe John Brennan was behind that one. I think the circumstances show that. I don't want to get off in the weeds on the details of that, but I think that's the case. And it's going to get worse. They'll have that battle with those types of people first. I said this was going to happen in the government. These types of things would happen, and then they're going to start, they already have started to go after commentators, for instance, like Kevin Shipp, who was prior CIA, Alex Jones, Roger Stone, Ben Swan, even Rush Limbaugh for that matter, and on down the line. And they're going to do this. And that's why I've constantly called for President Trump to get on the offensive, because this is going to get worse. It is. It's affecting his family. It's affecting other people. We're seeing people murdered. That's always covered up as an accident or a suicide or things like that. By the way, I do believe that the lady who just died was apparently married to one of the Rothschild men, and then divorced. It probably was a medical emergency, not a hanging. You never know for sure, but I think there's some people that are looking into that, and that's probably the case. But the reason why we always suspect, foul play is because that's how this whole thing works so often. But every once in a while, you have a real medical problem. And Lee Stranahan, for instance, will tell you that that's what happened to Andrew Breitbart, that he actually had a heart condition that caused him to have a heart attack. Now, could that have been exacerbated by a heart attack gun? I'm not saying it couldn't be. And then I understand that the coroner in that thing, the medical examiner, ended up, dead later too, shortly after his first pronouncement on Andrew's heart condition. But Lee Stranahan, I think, would be the person that has the best details on that. So I'm going to go with him. I'm not going to say that he should I'm not going to say it was a good idea to rule out the possibility that somebody could exacerbate Andrew's heart problem. I think that's still a possibility. But at any rate, the point is that medical things do happen, and we just got to look at that. But when you see so many dying around Hillary Clinton, around John Brennan, around this whole cabal that's doing these things, the Podestas, etc., then you gotta say, okay, well, this is beyond the realm of circumstance, right? Of coincidence. This is starting to look like there's actual, motivational operation here of one sort or another. So, at any rate, getting back to the other subject, I hope you understand that. And let me just say one more thing out there. Just because the FBI or the Commerce Department or somebody like that comes after someone doesn't mean that the reason why the government's coming after them is always because they're telling the truth and the government wants to shut them down. That's not true. The best way to hide what you're doing and to continue operating with those who aren't in the know is to claim that you're being persecuted when in fact you're not. Now, that's a hard thing to figure out unless you're willing to look at the entire spectrum of what's happening. Because, in fact, the government does persecute people. We saw that with the Bundys when they went after their land, with the Hammonds up in Oregon. That government agents were actually, law enforcement agents were actually regulatory agents. Most of those weren't law enforcement agents, despite what they claimed. But certainly the FBI and the DOJ, the FBI shouldn't be legitimate either, which is why it should go back to the Marshal Service, by the way. But that's another story. So the government did come after those people for and in behalf of Hillary and Clinton and Harry Reid and others, right? So that they could get the uranium, the land, do the Chinese little trading off there for goodies and all of that. So, all the time, it's certainly not all the time either way. Sometimes there really is something wrong. And there's a situation occurring right now that is looking into, I'll just go ahead and say it, the Q background on their funding, on the situations that some of these people are using the same thing. The people supporting them now, believing that there's this big thing coming, and they push it when in fact they've substituted something else for it entirely. And some of that I think is going to be found to be at least at this point in time, looks like it might go into wire fraud, different types of Ponzi scheme charges, and certainly violating the U.S. Code for claiming to be representing or part of the government or speaking for the President of the United States. If it's found that those people are doing that, ladies and gentlemen, they're not going to shut Q down because it's telling the truth and it's hurting the cabal. I think it started out that way, and the cabal went after it, and they allowed it now to get into this new thing. And there'll be people out there who will disagree with that, and that's fine. I'm not telling you that you can't listen. Like I say, I go look at the New York Times. I don't trust it. I look at it as another source of information. But there are some things happening in the Q deal right now. Go listen to Unirock again. There are things happening in the Q thing right now that really are unmasking what it has actually turned into. So I don't want to divide the conservative community, but the fact of the matter is, if you don't, and everybody will say, well, I do have the, talking about those who disagree with what I'm saying here, they'll say, well, we do have the gift of discernment. We do know the truth. Okay, fine. Well, the point is that this is going to divide us more, and the discernment from God is going to get more and more refined as we go along, and in the end, we'll find out who's right. Well, let's just say it differently. We'll find out who actually abided by the original principles. Let's put it that way, rather than being right. Because the process should be, and I've said this before, everybody wants to be right. Almost nobody wants to get right. So the procedure is, you might be mistaken about something. Are you willing to get right? Are you willing to find out and do the right thing, to get right? And that's really what this division is all about. Okay, so that's where we are. Okay, let me move into some other things. I stated back during the Bundy deal and the Hammond thing that very early on, we found out, as a matter of fact, I called Pete Santilli when he was up in Malheur. And again, I didn't agree with them taking over the building up there. I thought that was a major error. It just isn't a good thing. It took the first of all, it was wrong, and second of all, it took the focus off the Hammonds and turned it on the Bundys and that whole thing at the refuge. But I called Pete. I got some information as early as that. So that's what, late 2014, somewhere in there, December 2014. I got some information and checked it, and sure enough, it looked like that the entire thing in Oregon was about uranium. That's what we found out. So I called Pete Santilli and I said, hey, this thing's about uranium. The BLM is there trying to take the property from these ranchers like they were trying to take from the Bundys. The Bundys, it was for probably uranium, but also for the land, for the Chinese, so that Harry Reid could make some money off of that. But in Oregon, definitely the uranium. And I said right from then on, I said, this could be the downfall of these people, particularly Hillary Rodham Clinton. And when Trump started running for office, I was saying, wow, if he gets in, Hillary's already said that he's going to hang him. Whether or not he can actually ever accomplish that, I don't know. But as things progressed while Trump got into office, I finally realized, yes, the uranium one is going to be the linchpin. The Bundy situation, the Hammond situation is going to be the linchpin because it surrounds this uranium one thing. Uranium one has the potential, I'm not saying they're going to use it, but it has the potential to be the downfall of Hillary Rodham Clinton and her entire entourage, all of her folks. There was a mistake made. I think it was actually Putin's fault, but this is easy to do when you're speaking like he was doing. He moved the decimal point. Apparently, it wasn't $400 million that Browder assisted in giving Hillary Clinton the campaign, but 400,000. And I just wanted to help make that correction. So apparently it was 400,000, but regardless, it was still in violation of campaign laws. And it shows how Russians were being used by the DNC, and of course we know that anyway, as well as Ukraine, as Lee Stranahan has explained, and Saudi Arabia for Clinton, examples of those things. So again, those people are using what Obama, Clintons, etc. have done, knowing it's wrong, but are now trying to blame it on President Trump. Interesting how that works. I was very disappointed, actually, when I saw President Trump step back from his statement at the summit. Lionel of Lionel Nation also talked about this, and I'm not going to take as much time as he did, but basically Lionel said, hey, look, you don't do this. You don't back down like this. This is a sign of weakness. Is Trump trying to maneuver them to show themselves even more? Well, I guess you could say that, but frankly, I don't see the point. We already know. He already knows. Who's he trying to convince? The American people? I'm sorry, but they follow the bell curve. There will be people that will believe everything he says. There will be people that will never believe anything he says. And then you've got those people in the middle that supposedly he's trying to influence. I'm sorry, but I don't think that's a possibility. Not in the United States any longer. You either know it or you don't at this point. I think the division, it's getting more fine. For instance, like the thing, like I said with Q, are you going to follow Q or are you going to actually follow Trump? Why all this Q stuff out there? Q this, Q that. Selling T-shirts on Q. Q billboards, Q this, Q. Are we losing sight of Trump? Well, they'll say, well, no, Q supports Trump. Remember what I said about the LDS Church? I'm really concerned that at some point, even if Trump comes out and says, which he really already has through Jacob Wohl, the good friend of Don Jr., has already said basically that the Q's not the president. Well, what's happened? Well, first of all, they won't believe it, right? Oh, no. Q, follow Q, follow Q. So Q has now become the demagogue. Just like in the LDS Church, the president of the church becomes the demagogue, and you have to choose him over God himself. Well, that's the process that's going on in Q right now, with the exception that, I think they have possibly violated some wire fraud laws, some scamming laws. I don't want to get into any detail there, but it looks like that's going to be the way that they go after them. And of course, they're going to say, they came after us because we're telling the truth, and they have to shut us down and all that. They've already thought all this out. It's like I said before when they said disinformation is necessary. Well, in real intelligence operations, that's true, but not in this situation. I'm sorry, it just isn't. That's just an excuse for getting it wrong 90% of the time. I mentioned a few days ago about Ginger McQueen, and she came out with a Periscope, and I couldn't remember exactly what I was going to say because I got off course, which I often do. But she was talking about a sage on, that's what I call them, these sages that try to tell you that, Mueller's really with Trump, and, Sessions is really with Trump, and all this stuff. Anyway, this is one of those guys, and she said, this isn't making any sense. This is Ginger McQueen talking. She says, look, this guy is saying that the whole object of Q, because he supports Q, is to teach you, to instruct you, to be a teacher. But because of that, misinformation has to be done too. And she made a good point. You can't have it both ways. That's a caveat of dishonesty. You can't be a teacher and teach misinformation. That's diametrically opposed to the object of teaching. So that's what I wanted to bring out about Ginger McQueen the other day, and I kind of mentioned it one other time, and I feel bad I forgot that at that point. It was like 4 or 5 videos ago. But there's really truth to that, and that's what's happening here. So all I'm saying is that you need to keep your situational awareness on high, and you need to be skeptical. The constitutional republic is built on skepticism, not blind obedience. Not blind followers, not feel-good patriots, okay? Not summertime soldiers, but winter soldiers. Okay. I've said for some time, we're going back to this, that President Trump really needs to use the Marshal Service, the DHS, and supported by the DOD, primarily the Marines, and really raid the FBI and the CIA, etc. I don't know that that will ever happen, but as I've already shown you, there are more people calling for the takedown of the FBI. The National Review came out the other day, and they didn't quite go so far as disbanding or dismantling the FBI, but they did say it needed to be reorganized, that it needs to be split so that you don't have counterintelligence and criminal investigators working on the same case. You know what I mean? In other words, that you have two separate divisions to try to stop this nonsense that's happened with President Trump. It would be kind of like, saying that banks can't, be they have to have their operations separate so that you stop corruption. Okay, it's kind of the same thing. I'm not sure that that would fix the FBI because it's too far gone. I go along with the idea of totally disbanding it and taking, going through the agents and finding out who the good ones are, and that would be a pretty easy job. It'd be a long, tedious job, but pretty easy, and allowing them to transfer over to the U.S. Marshal Service. That I would go along with. And as I said, others have talked about that. Schaefer, Coulter, Chris Farrell, etc. We really need that. But at any rate, I was listening to American intelligence media the other day, and I said for a long time, I know that Trump has this his own personal investigation team, and I've heard people say, when he said my intelligence, he didn't mean the intelligence agencies, and he's kind of backed off on that. But I do believe that he has somebody helping him. We saw those military people there back in last October, November, that time period, whenever that was. And he said, this is the calm before the storm. And then, of course, that became part of this whole Q thing. But at any rate, they usurped that, sort of like the gays usurped, the rainbow. That's exactly what happened there. I don't know if you know that or not or realize it. But the point is that I do believe that Trump has some type of an organization underneath him that's doing some work. It's not Jeff Sessions, and I've said that for a long time. Well, AIM brought it out, and again, I've called for the U.S. Marshal Service and the DHS, right? Well, AIM came out and said something the other day, and they said, well, they know who's doing this investigation, but they can't really say. But they gave a few hints, and they talked about a particular organization, particular office in the DHS, and it's called the Department of Homeland Security Office of Intelligence and Analysis. That could very well be. It could be that Trump has some people in there, and also the Treasury Department, part of the Secret Service, but also this whole thing with taking assets. The Treasury Department has those investigators. They could be looking at some of this stuff of the Clinton Foundation, etc. Again, not Jeff Sessions. Let's forget that Jeff Sessions is worth 2 cents, because he's not. And then, of course, like I said, he could have the U.S. Marshals, and all being supported by DOD, principally the U.S. Marines, and maybe certain aspects of MI that aren't involved with Q. That's done, okay? I'm never going to allow anybody to say that Q is MI. That's just not the case. So at any rate, it's very possible that those are the organizations that are working. Are they numerous, powerful enough to counter what the deep state and the rotten side of the intelligence community is doing? I don't know. That's probably why President Trump is being very careful. We're moving towards the midterms now, and he might have an October surprise. You can bet that Mueller is planning on his October surprise, but it might be that President Trump has one as well, and maybe his will trump, pun intended, Mueller's and Clinton's and Podesta's and Brennan's and Clapper's and Hayden's. Isn't Michael Hayden disgusting? I swear that guy's a demon. He even looks like amazing. So anyway, I'm hoping that occurs. However, stepping back the way he did the other day, I don't know if that's a feint. I've talked about military operations before. Sometimes you'll make an attack, but your objective isn't to go all the way. It's to test the resolve and the disposition of the enemy. And so you'll only go so far, and then you'll back off. It may be that Trump's doing that. I would love to think that that's the case, but I don't know. Sometimes I worry. But at this point, all I can do is say, let's just get on with it. So I hope that even if he can't end up arresting and charging, and I know he doesn't do it, I understand that, but his operation doesn't actually arrest Hillary Clinton and Obama at all, at least put an end to their ability to wage war upon us. That's absolutely necessary. And sometimes that's all you really need to do when you have an enemy. And this is where the treason thing comes in, why it's a little different than Ginger McQueen might think. I agree with her by and large, but because of the type of situation that we have here, this really is operating with the help of foreign powers, giving them aid and comfort. I know there's not a declared war, but the war on terror and that whole thing, Trump can use to that advantage. But anyway, I'm getting off course here. The fact of the matter is that if he can incapacitate the enemy from being able to operate, I would be happy with that. And I think most of us will. And that's really a military objective. It's not, when you say you're going to annihilate the enemy, you don't always mean that you kill every living soul. That's not really what you mean. It means you take away their ability to fight. You take away their ability to operate. That's why you go after command and control. That's why I wish he would take Soros out. Delta Force should go in and take out Soros today. But at any rate, let's see if there's anything else here that I haven't covered that I wanted to. I think that's it. Let's see how long we've been going. Almost an hour. Let me look at the chat now, and let's see what you guys would like to talk about. I'm not going to... I think you all know where I stand on Israel now. I missed who asked the question there. If you don't know where I stand on the whole Israel issue, you need to go back. I don't want to spend a lot of time on it. I'll just say this. Israel is not the Israel that the Bible talks about. It's not. Even the Orthodox Jews will tell you that. Some of them. It just isn't. But that's not to say that I don't believe that under the present circumstances that the nation state of Israel shouldn't be allowed to exist. That's like arguing over whether, after a war, something like the Mexican situation, with Santa Ana and getting Texas. Who does that belong to? Well, the historical aspects of it is really kind of ridiculous, really. We just need to go from where we are here. And so I'm not arguing with the right of the state of Israel to exist, but I will argue to the end that it is not fulfilling Bible prophecy, other than, and I said it the other day, possibly God could have looked down and said, well, this is how the people are going to look at it then, so we'll operate it with that. But I'm not certain of that because there's a little trick that has to do with the Ark of the Covenant and Shiloh and the temple. And that's all I'll say about it. But I don't think in essence, even though his son-in-law, Kushner, is a Chabad Lubavitcher Jew, I don't believe that Trump is going to totally submit to Bibi. I don't see how or why he would do that, because I think he's smarter than that. He understands the Rothschild connections and all of that. I'm sure the Balfour Declaration. He might not know some of the other details, but I think he knows a little bit more. I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt on that, okay? So I don't think he's a puppet of Bibi. Whoa, what's this now? My chat sometimes just jumps ahead. Something about the Navy. What was that? Roy, the First Navy is alive and well, and they are backing Trump. They are part of military intelligence. The First Navy. So I was an Army officer. I'm not familiar with the term First Navy. But, it could be that naval intelligence is backing Trump. Let me tell you a story on that, as a matter of fact. And I may have said it before. I've been at this now since 2009. I've been a public figure. I've done a lot of things since '78. I've gone up against the government several times. I talked about the whole idea of the many definitions of terrorism. Only used one of them, however. Never got in trouble for it, thank goodness. But at any rate, at least on the surface. But the I was pretty well known, okay, especially when I came out after the Boston bombing thing, and I talked about that. And now the circumstances are starting to show that I was right about that. That it was a war between the CIA and the FBI, basically, to try to solidify that. A false flag. They knew who the Tsarnaev brothers were, the FBI, all of that. You can go back and look at my Boston bombing expose. But at any rate, it was after that, and I started really getting attacked by trolls and obviously by people in the intelligence community on the bad side. I could see that. It was real obvious. And I won't go into all the details of that, but I went to see my brother. My wife Carol died in 2008, and my brother-in-law and his wife had me come down to San Diego on occasion. That's where they live, and visit them. And I'd done that over time, and this brother-in-law of mine, he knew about my escapades and my adventures, and he's a Democrat, so he kind of goes, I don't know about that, he'll only let me. I don't try to force it on him, but he knows where I stand, and I don't think he took me seriously. That that I had some problems with these gang stalking situations and surveillance by the IC. And also by a criminal organization, I might add. And not that the IC isn't really a criminal organization, but I mean criminals that the IC was using on the outside that gave me some trouble. And I don't want to get into that story, but I almost ended up with cement boots in the Pacific Ocean on that one. Yeah, I've been in some pretty hairy situations. I really have. But anyway, so and this was after this as well. This situation happened. The situation I'm talking about in San Diego was after the cement boot attempt in about a year earlier, 2 years earlier. But anyway, so we go to this bar. It's one of his favorite places to go. All of his golf buddies go down there and meet. And of course, that's where I learned to golf. Really, I'm not good at it, but I enjoy it. And I'd been telling him about all this gang stalking and stuff that's happening. Yeah, okay. So we're sitting there, and these two guys come up. Remember, I'm in San Diego. What's in San Diego? Okay, the Navy is, high priority in San Diego. It's, it's all over the place. So we're sitting there talking. And I hear these two guys walk, and I saw them come up, but and they kind of look military, but you see them all the time in San Diego. And one of them speaks up and says, "Colonel Potter." I go, "What?" And my brother-in-law and I turn around, and these two guys are there, and I said, "You know who I am?" And they go, "Yeah, we know who you are. We're wondering if you'll come and talk to us. We need to visit with you." And I said to them, "And who might you be?" And they said, "Well, we're with the local office of Naval Intelligence." And I went, "Oh, really?" And I said, "So why do you think I would be willing to come and talk to you?" And they said, "Well, we just think it'd be important for us to sit down and talk." And I said, "Well, I'm not going to do that. I'm not subject to the UCMJ anymore. God made sure that wouldn't happen. He gave me all of the experience of that, but then put me in a situation where I am not subject to the UCMJ now, thank God." I didn't see why at the time, but at any rate, it's worked out that way. So I told them no. And so, they said, "Well, we see what you've been talking about." And they almost intimated that they agreed with me. But that could have just been a hook, so I really don't know. But to answer that question about, this is from Shockwave, "Roy, the First Navy is alive and well, and they are backing Trump. They are part of military intel." Yeah, it could be Shockwave. I don't know. That was a little uncomfortable situation for me, though. But my brother-in-law, when this happened, he finally realized I'm not blowing smoke up his rear end. His eyes look like saucer plates. He's never given me another day's trouble over what I say. He doesn't go along. He doesn't want to get involved, but he never actually confronts me with it anymore. What is the next step for the deep state? Well, we're seeing it. They've got their whole apparatus now calling for unseating Trump, either by getting his cabinet to go against him, all the way up to and including murder, assassination. I think they're fully committed to that at this point. I think that they are, that's why I say I hope that Trump has got his background organization behind him that will defeat this. But he's going to need all of us. This is going to spill out into the streets, and I've warned about that for a long time. It already has. So just, as I always say, just keep your situational awareness on high, and stick with principle, not personality. Okay, that's really where we need to be. When the SHTF occurs, you can't go with the personalities. You got to look at the principle and say, which way does it go? And that's going to be the dividing line. Yes, it's a very nebulous answer to you, but this is God's work, not mine. Okay, I don't want to get into a whole lot of religious. I touch religious things often, but I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on it. I'll just say this. Somebody was asking about that Israel is all of those who believe in Christ. I will say that it's those who have the law of God written in their hearts and their minds, which is the Spirit of Christ. That's what I'll say. Booger Dog. Brennan had cow over POTUS's ear from Putin's mouth, whispered, no surveillance to hear, vacated room, fear the ear. I'm going to look at that again a little bit later, okay? Interesting. Oh, Nathan Martin. First Navy SEAL designed as the maritime counterpart to the Army Spec. Oh, okay. All right. Thank you, Nathan Matsukas. He's saying First Navy SEAL, that's what he's talking about. First Navy is the First Navy SEALs. It's the maritime counterpart of the Army Special Forces. Okay. All right. I could see that. Yeah. I mean, look at Matt Bracken and Craig Sawyer. And there was another one, Ben Smith, I think was his name. He came out early on about, he was with General Boykin and rats. I shouldn't ever forget his name, but I always do. The Army guy who played with the NFL, Pat. I don't know why I'm forgetting his last name. So I'm so sorry. That's what happens when you don't script these things. But Ben Smith was there with the family of that assassinated Army staff sergeant, I think is what he was, who had been a football player and was starting to write home about what the Army was really doing in Afghanistan and Iraq, and they killed him. You'll probably know who I'm talking about. Anyway, Ben Smith was the SEAL that was with the family and trying to help. Pat Tillman, thank you. Gosh, I hate it when I have a brain cramp. Pat Tillman, thank you. Please forgive me. If anybody from this family is listening, please forgive me. Yes, Pat Tillman. That should be a name emblazoned on everybody's mind because of what he did. What they tried to use him for, McChrystal and Petraeus in particular, tried to use him to push the war narrative, and they thought he was their poster boy, and when he stood up against them, they looked the other way. I'm not going to say they pulled the trigger, but they looked the other way. And the CIA took care of the rest. Yes, Pat Tillman, good man, deserves a place sitting right next to God with the love of his life, whoever that is. Okay. Yeah. Roy, was there a beta test for Internet kill switch for censorship of drug Breitbart the other day? Shut down? I think so. I think so. Of course, they're going there. It's getting worse all the time. That's why I say this thing with Q. They're going to try to say that their illegal activities that they've done and are going to get looked into for are actually persecution, like the rest of these good conservatives. That's what they're going to say. And so I just put out that warning on that. Just look out. Again, a lot of good stuff from Q, but it's one of those things where you get 99 lies for that, or 99 truths for that one lie. And they want to talk about. I saw one of their promoters the other day talking about they're gonna show all the confirmations that have happened. Well, there we go again. There's the gambler mentality. They always talk about the times they won. They never talk about the umpteen thousand times they lose. And that's what cults do, and gamblers. That's a disease. Oh yeah, the U.S. Space Force. Yeah, interesting, isn't it? Who's probably more, I'll have to admit, I'm not up on that the way I should be. I think the person that probably is Jordan Sather. And I'll know, oh, no, he's a Q supporter. What? Jordan still has some very good information on the whole space thing. So I would say go look at Jordan Sather and what he's saying about the Space Force deal. I think it was inevitable. Whether you think of this whole creation as being a flat plane and we're not a sphere and we're just in this little particular area in the universe, whatever that is, I don't know how you view it, but regardless, I think the Space Force is an excellent idea by and large. Whether we can actually go anywhere else in the universe or not isn't the issue. It's doing what you can. So I'm for it. I think it's a great thing. Yeah, I think by and large Jordan Sather is awesome. Obviously he and I started out not in Q. He was very much into the space thing and in secret technologies and all that. Very good information, I think. Probably a little further down the road than I would be. I'm grounded more in stuff I can actually prove, right? But yeah, initially, and then then we both started going to the Q thing and expanding on that. And like I said, by November, by Thanksgiving, I was having some serious doubts, and basically left the whole thing in January, as most of you know. I thought that possibly there was a group inside who were trying to send people the right direction, but something did happen. They were compromised very early on, no later than January 1st, 2nd, 3rd, somewhere in there. But more than likely it was a total takedown by Thanksgiving, and then a gradual changeover after that so that nobody noticed the fact that it had been compromised. Although a lot of people caught the hack, like Uni, 0 Hour One, anyway, and some others. But anyway, so Jordan and I, we kind of parted ways there, but he still has good information on things like space and all that. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. I haven't looked at Q. I think you know that. Mark Helm is saying Q hasn't posted anything since the 4th of July. Well, they always have these downtimes. They've done this several times. It would be 10 days of darkness and this kind of nonsense. And really what it is it's like writing the script for a sitcom or for a series. On television, you have the seasons, a show. And then it goes away. You have a downtime where the show's not on, they're playing the reruns, that kind of thing, and they're writing new material. Well, that's really what's going on. This time, at least in the past, that's what it was. This time, it could very likely be that they are being looked at by law enforcement authorities, possibly by the Secret Service, because they've claimed to be, representing Trump, part of his operation, those kinds of things. That could be. I don't know. I'm not going to pretend like I know, but regardless, I guess they've been silent since July 4th for whatever reason. Not the Patriot soapbox, not and I don't want to name any specifics. I just don't like to do that. But there are people out there still pushing it, saying that, I think one guy said, he had a dream, that, we're into dreams now. Yeah, okay. You know, some people go to any effort to keep a follower. I mean, it's just crazy. Okay. Just dropped by to say hi. What is Q, please? You don't know about Q? I really don't like to get into it. Back in October, right after the Las Vegas shooting, there was a poster that started on 4chan at that time that claimed to be an insider with the Trump campaign, or at least in the know. I think we know a little bit more about what that meant at this point. I don't think it was anybody with Trump. I think it was somebody who had access to the information because of the digital pathways, and they crossed over into somebody's area that had control of that, and they saw what was going on, and they wanted to talk about it. And I'm not going to get into this in detail, but the bottom line is it was basically supposedly somebody who knew about the inside movement of Trump, where he was going, and the corruption in certain aspects of our government and in our institutions. Basically, I'm giving you a real quick summary here, and was to wake people up to what was really going on. That's kind of what it was. If you look it up, look up QAnon, not just Q. Just say QAnon, QANON, and I'm sure you'll find something on it. Yeah, see, there we go again. I don't know if Robert Kennedy actually died or not. I do know that he was very good friends with Donald Trump. I do know that. Could he have staged his death? Yeah, but the IC would be able to figure that out. So I really doubt that that's the case. Then you have to consider the family, the two women, and they were sisters. One was married to John. I mean, how are they going to keep that quiet with the family, the extended family? So, no, I don't think so. However, I do think that Trump is doing what he's doing partially because of his friendship and respect for John F. Jr., John Fitzgerald Kennedy Jr. I do believe that. Okay. All right, let's see. Off to farm, Mr. Pardon me. Oh, okay, yeah, everybody's got to get out and get busy doing their things. So I agree with that. Yeah, 0R1 said FBI is investigating the Q community. That's blue. Yeah, that's true. They are. And I think probably the Secret Service is too. And that might be why they're down now, but you're still going to get on 8chan. But you still have the 24/7 on Patriot Soapbox and all that other stuff going on. People having to pay for an app that they really don't need. All they have to do is use their browser, and they could get it without even paying. I know it's a small amount. It's like 99 cents a month or some crazy thing like that. But it's the idea that it's the pretense of what it is when you use communication systems and you don't tell the truth, there are contractual violations that occur. Truth in lending, all that kind of stuff, contract law and all that. And so if you use a lie to obtain a contract, then you're violating the law. So that's why I'm sure a lot of this is happening. Yeah, Q could be. I don't think it's a CIA-run PSYOP. I'm not saying they don't have a hand in it. I think they do, certain aspects of it, but I think it really came. Monograph looked at this early on. He was one, and Uni and 0R1 really expanded on it. I mean, Uni was on Unirock was on exposing this thing way back, probably in November. He was on top of it, but I think as far as the technical aspects of it, it really ended up in the hands of Monograph, who is a digital genius. He hates it when I say that, an IT genius. And 0R1, who I know, 0R1, like Monograph, rubs people the wrong way. I guess there have been some difficulties between different folks, especially on Twitter, where they've had some problems with those guys. But regardless, sometimes geniuses are a little hard to get along with. But we did track it, I should say Monograph and 0R1 and some other people that I know. Able Danger tracked it to, there was a thing called quantum packets, who was actually one of the posters for Q, one of the probably the Q team. Kinetic in the UK, Digital something or other up in Washington. Some connections to a guy by the name of Ryle who died, I think, this last April. Anyway, there are a whole lot of ties in to the Twitter keys, for instance. Seeing what Trump's tweeting out, and then being able to rush ahead on the timestamps and post what looks like a confirmation. All kinds of things like that were going on, and a lot of that I think has been shut down at this point. If you'll notice, at least last few Q drops I saw, it was all rah 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 cheerleading kind of baloney. Nothing like Intel drops whatsoever. The few that I did see, and most of those showed up on my Twitter account. Because, like I say, I'm not following Q at all. I'm not going to waste my time with it, other than when somebody asks a question like this. So I do believe that there were intelligence assets of one sort or another involved in pushing these people that way, but how much they actually did, how much in the intelligence assets are working inside of that movement, that I'm not certain of. Okay. All right. Well, we've been going for an hour and 20 minutes. I want to keep everybody, somebody's bringing up Kim Clement, I think, here. I'd love to keep doing this. Nassara, I'm not really a follower of Nassara. No, I think that's all. There's some problems with it, the financial system reset and all that. People see things coming, and then they use it as a way to market themselves. And so you got to be careful of that. That's one reason why when I started this back in 2009, I made a conscious decision up front that I wasn't going to monetize anything that I do. Because I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm not saying it's wrong to make money at all. I'm not even finding fault with the Q thing on making money. It's what you use as the what you say it's for. If it's not really what you say it's for, what I mean by that is if you say, for instance, that Donald Trump is behind us to get people to follow you, then you've got a problem there. And I think that's immoral, right? But if you think about that, why would Donald Trump need Q? He doesn't, and he's certainly not going to give money to it. Anyway. Okay. Tommy Robinson, that's a good thing to bring up. Thank you for doing that. Tommy Robinson has stood up for, if nothing else, for women who were being, he stood up against this whole immigration thing anyway, but he was definitely trying to stand up for the women that have been abused, raped, assaulted, even murdered. And this is what his government does to him. What's going to happen to him? I don't know. Look at Paul Manafort. However you feel about Paul Manafort, have they really given the Podesta brothers, or at least Tony, immunity? Here we go again. They, investigating a crime, right? They give Cheryl Mills, et cetera, all these people immunity. They're going to come in and talk about Hillary without getting anything in return, right? They really got nothing in return, right? The FBI, it was all in order to immunize all the people involved and to protect Hillary. Well, here we go. They're doing the same thing. They got Manafort in there. They want to nail him. I'm not saying whether they've got a good case or not. That's not the issue. The issue is that they're now doing the same thing they did with Hillary. They're immunizing people before they get anything for the investigation. It's corruption. The Mueller is covering for himself, maybe even for Sessions, certainly for Hillary and the Podestas and all those other people, for all of their crimes. It's a smokescreen to try to not just obfuscate what's happening, what has happened, and to cover up the conspiracy and the crimes, but it's also to try to place, as we see, those false accusations on Trump. It's a diversion. It's a decoy tactic. And So the same thing is happening there. So Tommy Robinson, despite the few problems that he had, because everybody has problems, his was a mortgage thing, I guess. Basically, he's a good man, and he was trying to do the right thing, and that's what happens these days in this world. Didn't the scripture say that the beast will make war with the saints? The bad part that I'm hoping we can avoid is that the beast prevails. There is an out. There is an out, just like for Nineveh. But I don't. So far, I don't see it happening. Okay. Obama gave a talk in South Africa yesterday, and apparently it was really bad. I did not hear it, so I can't verify exactly what's happened. I haven't had time to listen, but I was told that he was basically calling for civil war, and some other things, which wouldn't surprise me. I don't know if he meant civil war there in South Africa, but white genocide is definitely happening. Isn't it funny that they always get upset about genocide unless it's whites? Yeah, of course I'm concerned about that. Not for my own safety, but for the good men and women and children that are being slaughtered because of their skin color, not because of anything they did. Just because you live in South Africa didn't mean that you supported apartheid. Just like living in the South during the Civil War didn't mean that you supported the South. You see, those types of attempts to classify everybody, lump them into one group is wrong. Absolutely. I'm starting to lose my voice, so if you're probably noticing that, probably ought to take a sip of this. We really need to let you guys go. Okay. Okay. Wow, there's a lot more that we could talk about, but I think we need to end it here. Keep your eyes on the horizon, your ears to the ground. Keep your situational awareness on high. They're going to start stoking Antifa again. They're going to. Well, I just think it's going to get bad. I do. I wish Trump would act with whomever and whatever he has. Maybe he's working up to it, but I'm not real comfortable with the pace of it. So keep your situational awareness on high. Okay, prep, pray, stay out of the way. Self-defense is great. Don't think that you're going to go out there and defeat the cabal on your own. You're not going to do that, or whatever part of the military or the police are with them. That's not going to happen. You got to go with some kind of substantive authority, okay, like the president, all right, or good constitutional sheriffs and things like that. You should have already figured that out by now, okay, all right. God bless you. God bless the Constitutional Republic of the United States of America and the Second American Revolution. And, of course, God bless Donald Trump in all of his righteous endeavors. May God send him the spirit of discernment that he will know the right from the wrong, and then be blessed with the courage to do the right thing. Not much else we can do, right? But just pray for that. Thanks, everybody, for coming. Who knows when I'll be on next? Hopefully next Tuesday. If anything happens, I'll do these quick updates like I did last night. And I've done several times over the last week. But as far as a formal program, don't know when the next one's coming. But regardless, I hope you have a good weekend and you're enjoying the summer. If you're in the northern hemisphere, if you're in the southern hemisphere, I wish I had people there, I guess. But if you're down there, I hope the weather is treating you well. Okay. Thanks, everybody. We're out here till next time.